All right, I think we're live. Hello, everybody. Just thank you for attending our session. This is about the BSW program, the Bachelor's in Social Work program. Um, my name is Dennis Cow. I'm an associate professor at the School of Social Work and also the BSW program supervisor. And I'll let the other two presenters also introduce themselves as well.
Hi there, I'm Andrea Kenny. I'm the undergraduate administrator for the program. I work with students a lot on the application process, on any questions they have about program structure and so on.
Hello, everyone. My name is Adam Farhat, and I am a fourth-year BSW student and the co-president of the Bachelor of Social Work Student Society.
And we wanted to welcome you and thank you so much for your interest. Just a couple of housekeeping things. As if you, we have the chat open, and so feel free to talk to folks and introduce yourself in the chat. There's also a Q&A section as well. So if you have any specific questions, if you can post your questions in the Q&A, and we'll try to respond to each question in the order that they come. All right. So let's get started. But before we start, as a way to kind of get started, we want to try to get a sense of who's in the room. And so we have a couple of questions, a quick poll, and Andrew's going to post that up. If you can quickly respond to the poll. So this is the first question. Are you applying to the BSW program from high school, college, or university? We'll just take a couple of seconds. And then I know, Andrea, I still see the first question. Are we still waiting?
Yeah, I can move on to the other one whenever you're ready.
Okay, and then the second question? Okay, great. I actually don't see the results. So I don't know, Andrea, did you see the results?
Oh, sorry. Yes, absolutely. So for our first poll, of those who voted, 100% are applying from high school. So that's great. Welcome, everyone. That really helps us kind of tailor our information to you. And then in the second poll on where are you currently located, 6 of our students are joining us from Ottawa, and then another 8 are in Ontario, and we have another student joining us internationally as well. So thank you so much, everyone.
Great. Well, welcome, everybody. We have a kind of a quick agenda. I wanted to talk a little bit about what social work is, kind of a social work 101, and then get right into the BSW program and specifically admission, this concept of structural social work, which is our dominant framework that we use. Talk a little bit about the curriculum. I know all of you are interested in field practicum as well, and so we'll talk a little bit about that. And then obviously, the kind of the huge issue that is kind of impacting all of us is the impact of COVID and what impact and effect it's had on our program. And so we'll talk a little bit about that as well. And then Andrew is going to talk a little bit about the application process. It's changed a little bit from previous years. And then finally, Adam's here as a BSW student who will provide a little bit about his experience in the program. And then we'll just try to open it up for a Q&A. All right. All right. And so we'll provide these PowerPoint slides in some fashion, either probably through our website. So we'll make sure to provide these. And so don't feel feel like you have to kind of scramble and take notes. So these are the key contacts of the BSW program. So I'm the program supervisor, and what I do, I think I just oversee mainly the curriculum side of things. Andrea is the program administrator, and she's probably the most important person at this point when you're thinking of applying for the program, because she can answer any questions about your application, the application process, courses, course planning, things like that. And so she's probably the most important person to kind of note, and she's here. And she'll be probably answering most of your questions. The BSW Student Society is an important organization that represents students here at the School of Social Work, and Adam is the co-president, one of the co-presidents, and so he'll talk a little bit, I'm sure, about the BSW Student Society. They're not joining us today, but Brooke, Megan, and Emmy are the three people who to coordinate and take care of the field practicum. And we'll be talking a little bit about the field practicum, but if you have any more specific questions about the field practicum, please feel free to email any of them. So Brooke, Megan, and Emmy. Okay, so let me talk a little bit about social work and to provide just some context of kind of the program, what we try to do at the School of Social Work and with the BSW program. And so I just have a couple of quotes, right? Definitely we are nice people. I think most of us are with good hearts, and many of us entered into the social work program because it's the helping profession, because we want to help people, right? I think the one thing that I can set social work and the social work profession apart is that we're educated professionals. We are educated in theories, skills, and practices that in whoever our client is, right? We're trained to work with these clients. We're trained to engage and build trust, build relationships, and eventually, and you use kind of evidence-based and interventions that we know to work with different groups of people. And so that, I think that's kind of the key thing. Like everybody's, a lot of people are good people, but the social workers are we're trained to, to really hone that niceness and kindness to effectively help people. In terms of, who we work with, it ranges. Our clients include individuals and families, as you know. But we also work in organizations. We run organizations. We work with communities. We do policy work, etc. We do research. But the key thing here is that whoever our client is, we enter into a relationship and we enter into a collaboration with our clients. And the second quote is directly from the Ontario College of Social Workers and Social Service Workers, which is the registration, or the body that we have to register in order to be social workers here in Ontario. So like I said, we do a number of kind of different types of practice, ranging from direct practice to community organizing, administration, advocacy. We have social workers in government and politics. And so I think the important thing is like the skills and training that you're going to gain here really, I think, opens up some doors. I know there's a kind of a societal or public perception of what a social worker is, right? But I think in most cases it tends to be very narrow. And the reality is we find social workers in all different areas of practice, working on a number of different settings as well, ranging from hospitals to corporations as well. So why is BSW? I think first is to gain some skills and knowledge to work with diverse groups, in terms of theory, in terms of evidence-based practice, in terms of engaging with people and groups. The social work is a profession. And so with a BSW, you'll be joining a global profession of social workers, right? It's also a requirement to become a registered social worker. So in the province of Ontario, you cannot call yourself a social worker unless you have a BSW or an MSW, and then you register for the Ontario College, which means that you can't apply for a job that has the title of social worker, right? Of course, there's a lot of social workers who don't work who work in positions that don't have titles, that are, they're not called social workers, but the Ontario province, requires you, if you want to be called a social worker, you need to be registered. And one of those requirements is to get your BSW. And then, of course, as many of you know, it's one of the pathways to getting an MSW, right? So with the BSW, the cool thing about having a BSW is when you apply to an MSW program, you actually basically skip your first year. So you enter what we call the advanced year. So the BSW degree, it kind of serves as a kind of the foundational training into the MSW, and so you enter in your second year or your advanced year, and so it kind of helps. Obviously that means shorter time, shorter amounts of money you spend on tuition, etc. So this is directly from the mission statement for the School of Social Work. So we're going to start talking a little bit about the program now. So I'm not going to read this, but just kind of want to highlight a couple of things. There's key terms that I think we all are, our social work values, but we also are committed to as well at the school, including equity and social justice. We're hoping that students are engaged in skill and knowledge development in both practical and professional, right? In the classroom, probably more the theoretical in the classroom, and then once you get down into the practicum or the field placements, you're applying them and learning kind of how the theories and how the skills kind of play out in the real world. And then ultimately, we're trying to build competent, accountable social workers and advocates for progressive social change. The structural social work is our dominant framework that we at the School of Social Work kind of ascribe to. There's a number of theories, obviously, that social workers use, but the structural social work one is the one that we use. And it basically, speaks to the notion that all of us, our health and well-being and our behaviors are often influenced by a number of different contexts or systems or structures, including economic structures, financial structures, education structures, etc. So some of the highlights, I think, I just wanted to point out. I'm not going to read through all of this. I think we are a rigorous program. As you know, there are very few programs here in Ottawa, the other one being at the University of Ottawa as well, which is a good one. But I believe you need to speak French in order to attend that program as of right now. And so if you're not well versed or proficient in French, we might be the program for you. We're committed to developing a social work profession that's responsive and sensitive to the diverse population, especially here in Ottawa. And we'll talk a little bit about our curriculum, and hopefully that comes out in our curriculum. We are a relatively small program, one faculty for every 16 to 17 student. And then we have our faculty are engaged in research in a broad range of research topics and populations and communities. And this is kind of a quick word cloud that kind of gives you a sense of some of the work that we do as faculty, and some of which might be interesting to you as well. I'll give you a couple of seconds to just look over that. So our program, like I said, our program is relatively small, but we have roughly 366 BSW students. and they all across the years. The fourth years obviously are the biggest year because everybody is, that's the final year, and everybody at some point gets to their fourth year, right? We admit students at various years, at first year, second year, and third year, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. But this gives you kind of a breakdown of our BSW student population. So this is just a brief outline of our curriculum. If you can think about curriculum first divided by half. So the first half of the program is what we call foundation year. So this is where you're going to focus on kind of some of the theories, the concepts, introductory kind of introduction to practice with different groups like individuals, families, groups, and communities, a introductory social policy, and then an emphasis on kind of social work values. And so the foundation year is really kind of the generalist year where we're trying to kind of bring you into the social work profession. The advanced year is where we're hoping that you're able to start focusing on what you're interested in, right? And like I said, social work is a very broad profession, and you can get into a number of different things as a social worker. So, building on the foundation, your second half of the program is really kind of where hopefully you can kind of start honing certain skills, right? You're going to choose an advanced practice course, either with individuals, families, groups, or communities. You're gonna choose maybe one of your electives. Core electives would be focused on a specific population. For example, persons with disabilities, racialization, poverty, gender, sexuality. We're also there's research methods and stats as well as a course. And then you also have the option of, maybe if you're interested in policy, there's an advanced social policy course as well. And then in the advanced year, that's when you start to, that's where your practicums are going to occur as well. One in your third year and one in your fourth year. And again, trying to build on your foundational years, and then applying kind of hopefully the theories, the skills and the knowledge that you're gaining in the classrooms, and applying them out in the field. And I'll talk a little bit about practicum in the next slide. Okay. So the field practicum, I think, sets us apart from most other professions. It's a pretty rigorous part and component of our program. So every BSW student will get into at least 2 practicums, one in your third year and one in your fourth year. Each practicum involves a minimum of 352 hours. These hours have been slightly adjusted or decreased due to COVID, which has kind of limited the number of practicum slots. And so I'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. But each practicum basically is, you engage, you're in the field, you're working with clients, you're hopefully honing your skills, and the field faculty and staff will work with you. And there's a process where you know um, engage with them, have conversation with them, and engage in a process where hopefully you end up in a practicum that is, in your interest area, especially for your practicum 2. The practicum 1, I think, let me take a step back. Practicum 1 is kind of more of a generalist. We have a generalist approach. Like, we feel that you can probably learn in most any field placement. And so the field practicum 1, you have less choice in where you end up. But practicum 2, your fourth year, where you're really you're in your fourth year, really starting to figure out, oh, once I graduate, what I'm going to do. We try to work with you to determine kind of a good placement for you that you're interested in. These are some examples of some of the placement locations. Of course, COVID. Let me just talk a little bit about COVID, because I've mentioned it a couple times. The pandemic has created some havoc on our program. I mean, as you might know, for this past year, we've been having virtual classes. This fall, we're actually, some of our classes are in person, and that's going to be the same case next winter. We'll see what happens in the fall of 2022, and hopefully everything will be kind of opened up again by then. It's also created havoc with the field practicum, as you might know, with the lockdowns and things like that. It's very the number of field agencies, the number of practicum slots has been greatly diminished, and the type of practicum. Most of our students today, right now, are doing kind of virtual practicums. But hopefully, by the time the fall comes, things will open up again, and we'll start getting students out into the real field, not the virtual field. All right. So, Andrea?
Okay, so yes, now we're just going to talk briefly about the application process, which some of you might already be familiar with, but it's always worth a quick kind of run through. So yes, as you may have heard, the BSW is what's called a limited enrollment program. And that means that we have a certain amount of seats available each year. As this slide shows you, we admit around 110 students each year, give and take, and that's 40 in first year, 40 in second year, and 30 in third year. So for those of you who voted in the poll, it looks like most, if not everyone here, is coming out of high school. So obviously you're applying for first year entry. However, we do really emphasize that there are so many different pathways into social work. Some students will opt to go to college and do a social service worker diploma or something in a similar field like developmental services worker, community services, etc. And then we'll apply for the second year of the program once they have that diploma. And then we also accept students into our third year, and that's generally students who started in another program at our university or another institution and then decided that they kind of wanted to pivot a bit, or it may be students who graduated, worked for a little while, and now are coming back to take a second degree. So this last year, we received 348 applications. So admission is competitive. Now, that being said, we really, really encourage you to apply if you are interested at all in this field. And part of kind of why we share these numbers with you about accepting people at different years is to let you know that there are so many ways to get into social work if you're really dedicated to doing it in the long term. As Dennis mentioned earlier, we have an MSW program. So even for those who decide to do an entire undergraduate degree in a different program, they can also apply to a 2-year MSW. So definitely don't be discouraged by the limited enrollment element. We really want to hear from you and see your application. And in the absolute worst case scenario, we're here to talk to you about other options if you decide to pivot in a different direction for your first year. And then I think the next slide goes a little bit into the application process itself. Thanks, Dennis. So yes, there are 2 parts. The first step is that you're going to submit an online application. That is done through the Ontario University's Application Centre. And then we have this additional requirement. So all applicants to be considered need to complete our supplementary application. Our supplementary application is going to ask you to summarize what we call your human service or social change worker volunteer experience. So this is exactly what it sounds like. We don't call it social work related experience at this level. We know that you aren't social workers. We don't expect you to have social work positions under your belt. That being said, a lot of people who are applying and are interested in this field will find that they've done a lot of experiences that might align. So we accept a really wide variety of experiences toward this consideration. We look at peer mentorship, student government, advocacy work, obviously volunteering with charitable organizations. If you've gotten involved in politics, there's just such a wide variety. So really don't sell yourself short here. Look at the various experiences you've had over the years. On top of that, we are also going to ask you to include an up-to-date CV so that we can, again, get that full picture of your work and volunteer experience. We are also going to ask you to complete 3 essay questions. They're short 500-word responses for each. And you will be asking for 2 references. So ideally that will be 1 academic reference and 1 reference who can speak to work or volunteer experience. You will see here there is another optional element, which is that you're welcome to include a really short explanatory letter if you feel there were extenuating circumstances in any of these areas. So, for instance, if a student experienced, let's say a concussion, hopefully not, but a concussion at some point in their academic history, maybe their grades were impacted by that, and they want to let us know that that's something in their background that doesn't actually reflect their academic abilities based on their GPA. So that is something that you can include if you feel that there are some additional circumstances you want to let us know about when we're evaluating your application. So everything in this application except the references, you are going to compile yourself and upload to Carleton 360, which is our platform that you'll have access to after you submit your UAC application. Your referees, you will send them the reference form, they will fill it out, add a short letter about you, and they will actually submit it directly to us by email. And all of that information of where to send it is included in the application instructions as well. And you have 1 deadline for all of this to keep it simple, and it's March 1st. So the application platform is available now. You can get started as soon as possible, and you just want to make sure everything's in by March 1st for that to be considered. I think that's all on the application process, but I might be mistaken. It is. So now I will hand it over to the wonderful Adam, who can talk to you a little bit about the student experience.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Andrea. This is definitely a very interesting platform. I wish I would be able to actually get to, see some of the people and the faces that are here today with us. So, if you can in the chat, either say a hello or maybe just, share why you're interested in social work. And so I'm gonna basically just share with you all today, why I chose social work, some of the things that I've learned in the program, and then also talk a little bit about the Bachelor of Social Work Student Society. So for me, I had done my first degree in ethics at Ottawa U. I graduated in 2011, and then I studied accounting actually, and did a career in business and IT for about 8 years. And I loved my career up until the point where I absolutely couldn't stand it. I started to really question a lot of things about the systems and the systems of empower that are in place, and really started to think more critically about my own positionality and what are some of the different ways that I can be giving back. As living in a capitalist society, we often think of people and ourselves as replaceable, and so there was definitely part of me that had that thought in my head, where it's like it didn't matter what career I did, because if I chose this career, then it would be taking it away from someone else, and therefore like the result is going to be the same, and that's absolutely not true. That's what we're led to believe. And so I was thinking about going back to school, and wanted to be in a helping profession. I was thinking about psychology, and I was thinking about social work, and what led me to social work over psychology, especially at Carleton University, studying from a structural social work lens, is that ultimately there were more options that aligned with like my values and goals, both my professionally and personally. But really, the big thing is that learning social work from a structural lens, you're able to understand not all, but you're able to understand the systemic inequities that occur that lead to individuals having various different challenges, right? So being able to look and work with an individual client or a group and understand, okay, what are the challenges that they are able to control and solve, with on their own, and what are the structural inequities that are creating those challenges. Because often what we see uh, in therapy sometimes, or even in just like people's perspectives, is that we blame or hold victims accountable for issues that are created through policy, right? And so in social work, what's great is that you're able to um, work with directly with individuals, but you also have so many, or groups, but you also have so many other options in terms of career. So you can work, if you could then realize that you're more interested in policy, you're more interested in program development, right? So there's 3 different levels of social work, right? Either macro, meso, or micro. So again, policy, programming, individuals, groups, and you have all of those options with social work. The other thing is that there's value and there's power in being a registered social worker. This is why there's people like myself who are older coming back into the profession. Some people have had experiences like some of my colleagues um, work at CHIO, and different community centers throughout Ottawa, and they have now decided to go back and study social work because of career advancements, right? Having that, being a registered social worker, allows for upward mobility within your career. And in terms of the Bachelor of Social Work Student Society, so I am one of the co-presidents. The other co-president could not be here today, unfortunately. But so what we do is we do what we can to represent students, and work with students and try and engage them in having a better or more fulfilling student experience. And so we do that, again, just like in social work, on a number of levels, right? So one of them is event planning, trying to create fun and also engaging events for students to attend. And then the other one is we also get to be on and appoint individuals into various committees where we work with the School of Social Work to address some of these systemic challenges that are in place, and to help continually better equip social work students for the profession. The BSWSS does have an Instagram account, and I encourage you all to follow us. Especially if you're interested, you're able to send us a DM on Instagram if you want to talk, if you have questions about the program, but are a little more uncomfortable or hesitant to reaching out directly to the faculty or the School of Social Work. Please reach out to us. We're fairly quick to respond. Within like 24 to 48 hours, like, you should have something from us, and we'd love to engage and support you in this big choice. So yeah, thanks to Dennis and Andrea for having me, and please, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Great, thank you, Adam.
No
so again, here's the key contacts. In case you wanted to see them again, I'll just leave them here. The next slide is basically a thank you, and if anybody had any questions. So I think at this point we can open it up for questions. So I already tried to answer one of the questions, but then it got posed as another question. I'm happy to go into a little more detail about the question, but please if you have a question about the BSW program, or specifically about the application process, about the student experience, please feel free to post your question in the Q&A. So, and Shirley, I'm going to answer your question in just a little more detail than my response. So her question was, is the BSW specifically one discipline, or are there other disciplines to explore within it? For example, psychology, law, criminology, etc. Oh, what is this? Oh, that's cool. Okay. So the question's right there. So I think that I would describe the social work degree, the social work profession, as more of a generalist profession. So the BSW or the MS, if you decide to eventually go into your MSW as well, it's going to give you a set of skills and knowledge, and then you spend the time during the program trying to kind of key in and focus on specific things that you're interested in, whether that's a particular setting, for example, health social work or hospital social work, school social work with particular populations, social work with indigenous people, social work with homeless people, social work with persons with disabilities, etc. And so there's a lot of room. As a profession, I think we draw on multiple disciplines. So we draw on theories from psychology, sociology, political science, and things like that. And so, you know, in general, I mean, I think we have our kind of some theories that I think we are more dominant in our profession, and but we kind of bring these different theories into social work, into the social work profession, and then the key thing here is we try to apply them in the real field, right? We try to apply them in our practice when we work with specific clients or specific communities.
Okay, so the third essay question, you will get all of these in your supplementary application, so there's no need to write them down at this point, but if you're just kind of having things start percolating, I'll paraphrase, but generally the third question is, why are you interested in attending a structural school of social work? Given its commitment to creating systemic and institutional change in order to resolve individual problems. That is not an exact quote, but that's quite close. And I think Dennis would be great to answer the next one. And yeah, Anne Shirley is from the US, so is asking, is the social work curriculum Canada-centered, or does it get more globalized?
That's a good question. I mean, I think so. And Shirley, I'm actually from the United States. I've been in Canada for about 3 years now, and so I would say, let me say a couple of things, maybe two thoughts. One is I think a lot of our curriculum, I think, is focused on kind of working with one of the values of coming to Ottawa, for example, is that you learn about the communities and the challenges and issues facing people in Ottawa specifically, right? And so, for example, you go to a practicum that's set in Ottawa. And so one of the values is often, and I'll say this to anybody, right? Like you don't necessarily have to come to Carleton, but it's sometimes helpful to go to a social work program in a place where you're interested in working, right? Because you develop your networks, you develop your expertise in a particular area, in the local area. We're situated close to the federal government, which I think lends well to doing policy work and things like that. That's one side. On the flip side, I think the skills that you're going to gain, I think, are very transferable to wherever you want to end up, right? Whether it's within Canada, whether it's going back to the United States, whether it's going abroad somewhere else. So these skills that you learn and this knowledge are transferable regardless. Like you're working with homeless people here in Ottawa, you can work with homeless people in the United States or anywhere else, right? And so I think there's kind of a localized component to our program, but I think the skills and things like and knowledge are definitely transferable beyond border across borders.
Okay, and then I think Tatiana will bring up another question for us. Are there opportunities to get a minor in another topic in the BSW program? Absolutely. While I'm answering this, I'm going to see if I can get the list of minors at Carleton to post the link in the chat. But there are a variety of options for that. You aren't able to do a double major in the BSW, would be the only real difference between this and, say, a BA program. But yes, definitely, if there's another program you're interested in, you can minor as long as we offer it as a program option.
And if you're interested in a minor, make sure you talk to Andrea really quickly, like early on, because you want to kind of set up your curriculum in a way so that obviously you satisfy the BSW major requirements, but then in the process of that, kind of plan out the courses so that you can also meet the minor requirements as well. So make sure you talk to Andrea beforehand to kind of plan out the curriculum, your courses.
Yes, thank you, Dennis. That's a very important point. And yes, if anybody does want that list of minors and has trouble, and I think this will be our last question, just because we do need to wrap up in a couple minutes. So once we're done answering this, just please feel very welcome to email us with any ongoing questions. We're happy to talk to you one-on-one, either via email or to set up a telephone or video advising appointment, whichever works best for you. So is there anything we should be doing after applying and submitting our supplementary application to increase our chances of being accepted? I think Dennis will be a great person to answer this. I would say no on the surface once you've submitted everything, apart from keeping your grades up. That would be the key thing. However, I would just say, if this is something you want to be doing in the long term, I always just keep the momentum going. If there are things that you're interested in, definitely keep engaged in those, regardless of whether you're admitted to the program, whether you're waiting on a decision, because there could be programs you're applying to down the road or opportunities you're looking at down the road where those ongoing experiences and contacts will be really valuable. Dennis, do you have thoughts on this?
I mean, specifically to increase your chances of being accepted, I don't know, because once your supplemental application is in, aside from just making sure that you graduate right from high school, I think that's the main thing, right? Like make sure you finish high school, right? And finish strong, and then enjoy the summer, right? I think that's part of it, because the BSW program can be a very rigorous and sometimes it's not an easy program. um, um, I think you get challenged in many different ways, not only academically but emotionally, because just because of kind of the nature of kind of the work that we do, right? But it's also a very rewarding kind of profession in many ways as well. um, so definitely finish strong high school, or whatever program you're in. Like Andrea said, continue the momentum. Like if you want to, get. I mean, this is not necessarily going to impact your chances of being accepted, but you know, get in touch with Adam. Get in touch with the Student Society. Learn more about the program as a way to kind of get ready for going into the BSW program and things like that. But once your supplemental application's in, right? I mean, that's basically what we review in regards and making our decisions, right? So, I think.
Okay, so I
Are we
think
done?
that's all we have time for tonight.
Okay. All right. So just to end, I want to thank everybody for coming, and thank you for your interest in the program. And I would say welcome. I want to be the first to welcome you to the social work profession. If this is something you plan on doing, feel free to contact any of us that's listed here if you have any specific questions. I think Andrea, again, is the best person to talk to in regards to kind of the nitty gritty of the application process, and things like that. whatever is involved in that. If you're interested in kind of more broader kind of social work, like, oh, what is social work, or what does it mean to be a social worker, I'm happy to answer any questions. And then finally, Adam, I mean, you know, as a student, I have Adam in one of my classes, but he's also the co-president of the student society, and so he talks to a number of the students and knows a lot about kind of what it means to be a student in our program. So I would say, feel free to get in contact with the student society as well. Okay, but thank you again, and we look forward to hearing from you, meeting you, or maybe seeing you next fall.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Good luck.